Welcome back to Ontario Cryptids. I'm happy to see that you've all returned for another exciting episode. Today I have 3 incredible encounter stories lined up that you won't want to miss. If you're enjoying this type of content, be sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss out on what's coming up next week. And if you have an encounter story of your own, I'd love to hear about it. Send your stories to ontariocryptids@gmail.com, and it could be featured in a future episode. Now let's get started with these incredible encounter stories. Summer of 2020, quarantine year, in late July. I was hiking with a friend along Rio Chama. Although we were just on the other side of the river from town, the railroad was not running, the campground was closed, and the majority of the town was empty. This was a short day hike as we were seniors. We had a dog accompanying us, a pit bull mix, for part of the way. Before we reached the river, we had to return the dog to the car. She became unusually excitable and fearful. Note: my friend and the dog lived up the mountain. The dog is used to wildlife and has treed a bear before. Anyway, windows down and the dog is much happier. We returned to our walk. We had crossed a river and was on a trail that runs by the bank when we heard a series of hollow knocking sounds. These were loud and resonate, not woodpeckers or falling branches. A short time later, they were repeated at a distance. The knock sounded lighter in tone, like a hit on a more solid wood. The knocks close to us responded, and we decided that it was in our best interest to leave the area. The date was December 23rd, 1978 at 1 a.m. I remember the date clearly as I was 10 years old and Christmas was just 2 days away. I always tell the story the same as it's burnt in my mind like it was yesterday. I lived on a mesa in Safford, Arizona. A mesa is a raised plane of earth above the surrounding resembling a table. There were 4 other families that lived on the mesa. Our farm was a 40-acre piece of land with our nearest neighbors being a quarter of a mile away. I was awoken and, for a lack of a better term, pulled to my bedroom window which faced the Graham Mountains, which during the day I could see the road that went to the top of the mountain. There were no homes or buildings anywhere in that direction, at least not in 1978. What I saw about 200 yards away was a classic silver UFO. The 2 halves that separated the craft had a bar of pulsating lights that went clockwise in direction and a ramp coming from an opening. At the bottom of the ramp were 3 aliens who I could see clearly unclothed grays with very large eyes and very spindly arms. They were short, but upon seeing them at this distance, I heard them inside of my head. I heard them talking to each other in an incomprehensible language. I realized I wasn't able to move any part of my body, and this caused my heart to race. I guess one of them noticed me and, to calm me down, informed me I was being given a gift and not to worry. I would be thankful for it. It was like my brain was a filing cabinet and they were rifling through it. I've always had the feeling that they either left something or modified something, because after going to sleep, which I don't remember how that took place, I had an amazing thing take place the following days, but I'll get to that later. I woke up that morning and went to my friend's house a quarter of a mile away and told him about my experience, and he said, "Let's go to where you saw the ship." When we got there, where I had seen the craft the night before was a bright new green plant on the otherwise lifeless or occasional creosote bush randomly thrown around. This was a solid bright green circle, the size of the craft I had seen. The next night was the night before Christmas, and after falling asleep, I awoke floating out of my body in the lotus position, the kind the yogists do. I looked down at my sleeping body. I was on autopilot just along for the ride. This included going through my closed bedroom door. I didn't feel anything as you might have expected, and I saw everything that was underneath the Christmas tree but unwrapped, the stretched Armstrong, the Rock'em Sock'em robot, etc. I went back floating about 3 feet above the ground, again through the closed door and back into my sleeping body. Since that night, and I know that it occurred, I believe the gift I was supposedly given isn't really a gift. On occasion, for no particular reason, words will come out of my mouth about something in the very near future that will occur. On many occasions, I have said something to my wife, like, once while driving, I said, 2 of those 4 guys on the Golden Wings will be dead. An hour later, before going on the bridge to the first key in Florida, we'd witness 2 of the 4 bikers weeping over the 2 dead bodies in the side of the highway. I have had many such similar occurrences. I was once benefited by hearing a warning in my head, and then physically pulled backwards before a 6-zone, 1.5-inch rotary valve that was directly over, particularly my head, exploded and went 80 feet into the air and onto the next street. That should have killed me. I have had many similar things, usually regarding people about to die in motor vehicle accidents. Some gift, huh? I do attribute these gifts to my experience with the 3 gray aliens that December night. I've never wrote in any of these groups before, but I thought I'd share this one. I'm not sure why, but I hope I made sense since I don't have much of a gift for writing. I'll tell this story as best as I can remember. Frankly, I'm not sure I believe it myself. Maybe my imagination got the better of me, or maybe my sense of fear took over. Regardless, these are the events present in my mind. Colorado is a place of such majesty, where the mountains crest the heavens and the forest feels wild and free. I am fortunate enough to live in a small town nestled underneath one of the state's great 14,000-foot peaks. Here, the aspens grow in groves between the evergreens and deer walk freely between homes. My wife and I share a beautiful little wooden house with our lovely animals and enjoy the seclusion our town grants. About 1.5 years ago, on a clear autumn day, my wife and I had gotten into a heated argument. I couldn't tell you what we were fighting about now, only that it was likely one of the worst we have ever had. I remember being livid, and when I reached an ending point, I realized I desperately needed to calm myself back down and clear my head. Looking back, it feels quite childish of me, but still angry, I exclaimed to my wife, "I'm leaving for a bit." I hopped in my little white car and left the house. I took off into the national forest surrounding our town, driving aimlessly, not sure where I was going to end up, only that I needed to find a place that could bring me some peace. I drove for about 30 minutes and without much thought just turned left down a long dirt road known for having a few campsites and a state park. I continued for another 30 minutes or so with a few cars passing me occasionally, until I decided the place that I was looking for needed to be completely secluded. So I turned down a small dirt road with no noticeable signage or vehicles, continued for a minute, and turned down another dirt road until I came to where it seemed to abruptly end. Perfect, I thought to myself as I pulled in. It was an excellent spot to be alone. Directly in front of where I parked was a lush grove of aspen trees. As I got out of my car, I was enveloped by the sound of the wilderness. The birds were singing, the wind was blowing, and I could hear little squirrels dancing across the treetops. Peace, perfect peace. I walked on an unmarked path that winded through the aspens and soaked in the feeling. My anger almost immediately melted away, and I remember feeling silly for being so mad in the first place. After about 5 minutes of walking, I looked deep into the aspen grove beside me. I could feel it calling to me to walk amongst the trees, and I was more than happy to oblige. I stepped off the path and walked through an untouched grove, enjoying every minute of the nature around me. The feeling of peace was overwhelming. I felt like a new man and was refreshed. The shimmering yellow leaves twirling on the branches above me were gorgeous and reminded me of video game graphics where the pixels dotted on and off. The wall of the white aspens were mesmerizing, continuing rows after row in all direction. The sound of the birds. Wait, I couldn't hear any birds. I stood there frozen and listened. Suddenly, I could no longer hear any birds singing or any other animals like squirrels or chipmunks scurrying. There was only the faint sound of the wind blowing amongst the branches. It felt eerie. I began to walk back to the trail when I could swear I heard something that sent a shiver down my spine. Each of my footsteps made 2 sounds. I turned around, my eyes darting in every direction. I couldn't see any movement in the rows of the aspens. I started walking again, and to my horror, the second step of footsteps could be heard behind me. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, but if I were to guess, I'd say whatever was behind me trailed me maybe 20 meters. I stopped and looked 2 more times, trying to find some shape in the rows and rows of trees, but I couldn't see anything. I started walking faster, my body covered in goosebumps and my heart racing. I could hear it matching my pace, but the footsteps were inching closer and closer from what I could tell. At one point, something told me not to turn around again. Keep going. Get to the car. I made it back to the clearing where my car was parked, facing the forest I had left. I unlocked it as soon as I saw it. The footsteps were maybe 10 meters behind me now. As I left the forest trail and stepped onto the clearing, it sounded like the footsteps had suddenly stopped. I didn't care though. I marched up to my car as fast as I could without breaking into a jog. I flung open the door and hopped in. I plunged my key into the ignition, and when my car burst into life, I looked up. I still think about what I saw. Those few seconds are burnt into my brain forever. Everything else I could explain away by just hearing things and a feeling of dread, but I've never hallucinated before. When I looked up, deep amongst the rows of aspen in front of me, I saw a dark hand slowly retreat behind a tree. I reversed down the road at speed and drove straight home. When I got there, I immediately told my wife what had happened, but she just kind of nodded her head, likely thinking I was just trying to change the mood after our argument. I still think about that day. Part of me wants to go back to that spot. I'm not sure if I want to prove to myself that I'm not crazy or what, but I haven't built up the courage. Who knows, maybe my brain was grasping for a new feeling that day and decided fear would suffice, or maybe I really did experience something born of Native American legends. I do know that sometimes when I stay up a little later than I should and my wife is asleep, I feel the same chill. Like something is watching me through the window. P.S. I'll be moving soon, so luckily the temptation will be no more. The woods out here definitely feel wild. Thank you all for listening until the end. I truly hope you found these 3 encounter stories just as fascinating and creepy as I did. If you enjoy this content and want to support the channel, consider becoming a member and enjoy some exclusive perks. Now, let's acknowledge the current OC members. I would like to thank Elizabeth, Jim, Diana, and Teresa for the contribution and support as members of the OC membership program. Your support is truly appreciated. And of course, don't forget to hit that like button, the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss out on another episode. If you have an encounter story to share, I'd love to hear it. Send it to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story with the OC community. Wishing you all a great week ahead, and be sure to tune in next time for another exciting episode on Ontario Cryptids.